We're waiting. Thank you for your mistake talk. Um, yeah, I want to just mention two things that came up when Jane was talking about mistakes, and I was thinking about, Jane is studying flute, and I'm studying piano. Old ladies, we retire, we decide we're going to do some music. Jane was actually a voice major, so she knows music very well. Um, And it's very interesting because you're constantly making mistakes. But if you think of it as, oh my God, I'm making a mistake, you're screwed. You can't do that. You just have to, oh, this is what I did. I need to do that, and you often have to look at it carefully. Well, what exactly were my fingers doing? That kind of thing. So, yeah, so that's a big lesson in just, you walk into the door, you open it, and you walk through. And the other thing that came to mind was Kangan practice. So, Kangan practice, you're always getting the wrong answer, you know, um, but that's okay. That doesn't really matter. We get really upset about, oh, I made this mistake. Oh, I made a wrong answer. What will the teacher think of me? Oh. But that's just besides the point. And the big breakthrough in Kangan practice is not, or one of the big breakthroughs is not when you start answering all Kangans correctly. The big breakthrough is when you don't think, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I gave a wrong answer. You just do the work. So just one foot in front of the other. That's all, And if one foot trips, you pick yourself up and you do it again. There's this great saying in Northeast Asia: 7 times fall down, 8 times get up, which, as a former mathematician, drives me crazy. And people try to explain it, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the real import of that is you just get up, you just get up, you just get up, you just get up. So thank you very much for your mistake talk, which was not a mistake. Okay, are there any questions?
Yesterday, when we were in the Compass class, I started thinking about the life of a monk or a nun in Zen. And I am not at all clear how their lives would differ from the life of a Zen master.
Okay, so being a layperson or being a monastic. So Zen masters can be lay people, Zen masters can be monastic. So that's not the issue. So lay people live lives where they have to have some kind of financial support, either from their family or from their own job or from their inheritance or their stocks and bonds, whatever. But they need some kind of individual financial support. They have obligations um, at work. They have obligations to their family. Their life is led in a way where practice is not the main, even if it's central to their life. It's not their main occupation. They're not spending their lives dedicated to practice, even when they practice very hard and very seriously, as many people on the screen here do. But their life has other obligations that take them away from that. Whereas if you're a monastic, your life is completely dedicated to practice and to the community. You're supported not as an individual, but your community is supported, and you're supported by me, because you are a monastic. You don't accumulate things. Lay people can accumulate things. Monastics cannot accumulate things, although every monastic I know has some kind of like it's no secret that Zen Master Daekwang absolutely loves really cool cars. And for a long time, every time he came and visited, he'd try to convince Stan to get a new car. Sort of vicariously living, And Zen Master Sung San really liked watches. He really liked good watches, and people would gift him with good watches. Um, but their life is less materially directed. It has this very different direction. and their life is much less about, like we have identities, and lay people, we have identities, and monastics don't have like individual identities that they're trying to shore up, that they present the world. They have this kind of common identity. And of course, they're all completely different individuals because they're human beings, but they don't have to build up like, a brand, or, the way people are now, where you build up kind of a persona. They don't do that. So it's a very different focus of your life. Your life is really not about your particular circumstance. It's really much more in this other direction. Whereas as a layperson, you have a particular circumstance and you have to deal with that somehow. So it's a very profound difference. But on the other hand, one of the main sutras is the Vimalakirti Sutra, which is about this very wealthy merchant named Vimalakirti, who was deeply enlightened and who beat even the Bodhisattva Manjushri in Dharma combat. So, so lay or monastic, everyone has the capability of waking up. In fact, everyone's already awakened. So everyone has this capability, but the form that the life takes is very different. So monastic training, they don't even, like, they'll have like a little small drawer where all their things have to fit. Like, you've got this beautiful art in your house, and we've got beautiful art in our house. If you're a monastic, you don't have beautiful art in your house. You don't have a house. You have a room somewhere. And if you're like Zen Master Sungsan, you travel between temples and you have a room here and a room there and so on. And those are not your possessions in the room. I mean, all you have is your socks and your underwear and your, pants and your shirt and your robes, and that's what you have. And your fancy watches. But yeah, I remember once being filled with gratitude for Zen Master Sungsan's presence, and I just wanted to buy him something. And I went to a local store, Phoenix Gallery, and I went and I got him this beautiful, beautiful ceramic bowl. And I gave it to him, and he just looked at it like, you could just see him thinking, what am I going to do with this? I'm a monk. I don't have things like this. So it's just a different, sort of different viewpoint, But everyone can wake up. In fact, everyone is already awake. We just have to see it. We just have to allow our awakening to sort of bubble up. Okay? Thank you. And I think Kelly had a question. Am I right?
Following up on that, I'm curious about whether lay Zen masters, whether that is traditional or whether it's Western innovation. I'd like to ask if you can address that.
Well, it goes all the way back to Vimalakirti, who was way before Zen. So the notion of lay people whose practice is very deep and who have some kind of wisdom, that goes way back. In the 50 some odd teachers that Sudana meets in the last chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, many of them, it might even be the majority of them, many of them are lay people. I mean, there's a goldsmith, there's a prostitute, there's, all kinds of people, lay people. So the notion of lay people who have some kind of, I hesitate to use this word, dharmic accomplishment, which is a terrible word to use, but some people have some kind of, wisdom. That goes back to the time of the Buddha. The notion of lay people being teachers is something that there's a tradition in Zen, like Layman Pang and his daughter and his wife were all highly regarded, and they appear in the literature. You have the record of Layman Pang, which is, to have the record of so and so, that you only have that for great teachers, right? So, or teachers who have good public relations and people know about them. So you have the record of Layman Pang, and you have these stories about him and his wife and his daughter. He also had a son, but the son apparently wasn't quite as venerated, Dharma-wise. So that also goes back a long ways. And in the early Sung dynasty, certainly Miao Tsung received transmission before she became a nun. She was a very wealthy, she was the wife of a very wealthy, high status man. And she had to wait until she was a widow until she became a nun. But she practiced very hard, and Dawi made her, gave her transmission when she was still a layperson. So there are these sort of outliers. In starting, I think maybe in reaction to the 20th century, but in reaction to Christianity, but starting the late 19th and early 20th century, there was certainly several movements in both Korea and in Japan to to empower lay people. Now, in Japan, the traditional monastic forms were killed by the Meiji, it's called the Meiji Restoration, this 19th century government that saw, as many governments do, that saw the monasteries as sort of a place where people could act against the government. They were not under government control. And so they destroyed the monasteries in Japan, but it still had this sort of quasi-monastic tradition where they could get married and have families, but they still, were considered, they're now called priests. But there was also this movement to make it even more general than that. And then in Korea, the Taego order broke away from the Chogi when the Chogi, so the Japanese made the Korean monks do the same thing. They got rid of the monastic, they tried to get rid of the celibate monastic order. They were not successful. And then when the Japanese were driven out of the country after World War II, then there was this big movement where the celibate monks and the married monks and the celibate monks kicked the married monks out of the Choge order, and then they formed their own order, the Taiko order. But there's also a movement that says, well, not even that, because there's taking some kind of monastic vows, even that you should have teachers that don't even do that. And then Japan, the school that comes from Yasutani, that for example, Robert Aitken and Philip Kapleau, and they were teachers that is completely lay. They don't consider themselves priests. They're just completely lay people. So yeah, and I don't, so there's this kind of thread that runs through, and I don't know everything about it. But one of the wonderful things about the Quantum School of Zen is that we don't make a distinction between lay teachers and monastic teachers. Teachers are teachers. Although some of the monastics do, there's some of the monastics in Korea that if when they're bowing to the teachers, you may not know this, but the standard thing is you bow to the teachers in the morning. You do a prostration before the morning bows, and they will position themselves so that if there are lay teachers present, they're not bowing to the lay teacher, they're bowing to the monastic teacher. But that's not approved of in the school, So anyway, yeah. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. This was all very, I found it very interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, sort of sociological, whatever. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
First, thank you, Zen Master Bon Hae, for a really amazing Compass of Zen discussion yesterday, and everybody who participated. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, you guys were the amazing people. You were just amazing.
But you facilitated it, and you were amazing too. So, because I babbled yesterday, I didn't get to some points. So I had a question about the Great Vow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really struck by, I'm paraphrasing because I've got notes, the true bodhisattva is always sad, feels all beings suffering all the time as if it were their own. This sadness leads directly to compassion and action that helps others. Could you comment on the Great Vow and what is happening in the world today? Thank you.
No, what's happening in the world today is really awful. But the flip side of that is it's always like that. It's just usually we don't notice it. So that's very important. Um, yeah, yesterday Liz in class asked about, Zen Master Sung San always talks about help this world, and many Zen teachers in other schools don't talk about that much. Some of them do, but many of them don't. And she asked about how much that was original with Zen Master Sung San, and I gave an answer, and I want to expand on that, and that relates to Margaret's question. It's deep in the Mahayana, is this notion of our practice is for others and not for ourselves. It's, when Sudana goes on his pilgrimage and meets all these teachers, they may live in bejeweled palaces and have flowers all around them, but that's not about, oh, I'm a rich person. That's about they're doing this for others. They're teaching others. The prostitute is teaching others. The goldsmith is teaching others. Their life is for others. And it's very, very deep in the Mahayana. And the first vow, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to, we say save, some people say liberate them all, but what it really is take everyone to the other shore. So, yeah, so that's, and then, and then what Margaret just brought up is this thing of the Bodhisattva feels the pain of this world. And that's a very interesting notion, because we think of that and we think the Bodhisattva must be crying all the time. You feel the pain of this world, you must be crying all the time, you must be sad all the time, you must be just, your emotions are so filled with the horror around you. But you know what? If you do that, you're not helpful. I have a cousin who in the depth or height or whatever you want to call it of the AIDS crisis, she was an AIDS nurse. And she was a kind of a heterosexual woman who really liked to hang out with gay guys. So when the AIDS hit, it was hitting her community. That was her community, and it was hitting her friends. It was like really deep, And she was tending to these guys, and at that time there was no cure. There was nothing you could do except ease their symptoms. And she is one of the funniest people I know. She just, you could tell, that if you were sick and dying and she walked into your room, you would instantly feel better, because she just had this kind of, sort of real down to earth, okay, what's going on here, not like haha jokes, but just this real down to earth kind of lightness, heaviness at the same time, So the Bodhisattva who really feels this pain, and my God, there's pain. And, Ida is hitting, it's going to hit, and there's going to be even more pain, and it's on top of a pandemic. And, you could just, there's no part of the world, nothing is ever immune. None of us are immune. And right now it's just, and we know about it because of media. It used to be, 200 years ago, you didn't know so much about it. You heard about it in the newspaper, and the newspaper was like a week late, And then 200 years before that, you might not have heard about it at all. But now it's always there. And to really absorb that, and when we're, when the good things are around us, to not get smug about it, to never lose sight of the suffering in this world without having it pull you under so that you can't be helpful. So that's our job. That even in our comfortable situations, and I think all of us, I'm looking at people on the screen, I think all of us are in comfortable situations at the moment. Even all of us in our comfortable situations, we should never lose sight that we're going to die. Everybody's going to die. Everybody suffers. And to hold that in a way that doesn't pull us and the people around us down. There's a wonderful, wonderful piece today in the New York Times. I really recommend it. It's a woman, she's in her mid-30s, and I guess she's 35 or 36, and when she's 35, she's told, you have terminal lung cancer, you're not going to live more than a few more months. And talking about, how she's living with that in just this wonderful, wonderful way. It's titled, I'm not going to write a bucket list. She has all these like counselors who say, oh, you should make a bucket list, and in the 4 months you have left, what are you going to do? Learn a new language, what? And it's just this wonderful thing about, what life really is. That it's not what we think it is. It's not these little goals we set for ourselves and these wants that we have. It's just, and she never says this is, it's just this amazing article. And I really recommend that everyone read it. So yeah, we have to hold this suffering, but we can't hold it in a way that prevents us from helping. So thank you for your question. And Liz, thank you for your question yesterday. And we're out of time. So, okay.